Talking in my sleep at night, making myself crazy.
Hello and welcome back as I try to muddle through yet another book review, which hopefully I don't actually muddle through, but as much as I enjoyed this book, I could not remember what happened. I listened to it on audiobook, so thankfully I was able to get the ebook so that I could go through the chapters one by one and refresh my memory as to who was who and what was what and how was how. But yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. My memory retention is not what it used to be. Maybe I'm just going through too many books at a time and I really need to be better about reviewing my books as soon as I finish them, but excuses are what they are and I'm not going to give any. Today's book is The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther, or Walter. Actually, I don't know if the TH is pronounced or if it's not, but besides the point, as I mentioned, I actually like this book. My biggest problems were the cast of characters was really big, and I found it hard to keep track of who people were, and just by virtue of that, I thought we had some subplots that we didn't necessarily need. But on the whole, I thought this was a sweet book. When I went into it, I actually wasn't expecting much because I had read a review that wasn't super favorable. And when I got through it, I was like, I disagreed with what they said, which is totally valid. I'm sure you guys disagree with half the things that I say, generally because I don't like the books that I end up reading, and you love the books that I did not like. But I was a little surprised because this is a book that deals with the issue of death and grief. And I was surprised as to how lighthearted it was. If I remember correctly, that was the other reviewer's problem, was that we spent all this time focusing on something that wasn't necessarily the heart of the matter. But I liked it. It was something that I needed. I'm tired of overwrought literary fiction. I'm tired of books that they're trying to do too much without saying anything at all. Let's jump into it though. The main character, her name is Meredith Fox, and we are opening 18 months after the death of her older sister Claire. They have come to kind of a family farm called The Farm, and they're gathering for her cousin Sarah's wedding. Her cousin had been with Claire at the time of her death, and so we do automatically get the sense of it's painful. Meredith has pulled away from a bunch of her family and her friends. She has also recently been broken up with by her boyfriend of 4 years, Ben. So she's showing up to this wedding of a family member who reminds her a lot of her sister, and to a place that also reminds her a lot of her sister, while reeling from the rejection of the one person that she sought solace with in the wake of her sister's death. Personally, I could have used a lot more of Ben. If he was so important to her and him breaking up with her was such a big deal, I thought we needed a little bit more than we got. He is replaced right away, which we all know my feelings on insta-love, and this book takes place over the course of a week, so it's basically a week leading up to the wedding. But for some reason, it didn't bother me so much when I was reading this book. I think I liked the characters so much, and it didn't necessarily feel like, oh, we are actually in love. I think it was more of, why does she meet someone so quickly and he likes her back and they move forward and they establish this relationship, like when it takes most people 10 times longer to get to the point that they got. So for me, it wasn't necessarily insta love so much as like insta relationship, and then they don't even want to call it a relationship. That does bother me too. But I didn't really have an issue, but there were moments where I took a step back and I was like, seriously? Meredith and her family are on their way to the farm, and this is something that I couldn't quite picture, but she and Claire had this tradition of opening up the sunroof when they were on the ferry and about to get off, and so she has the sunroof, and then she gets like this call or this text from Ben, and it greatly upsets her, and she's like yelling at him. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe all these people just heard me freak out. And then as she's getting out of the car, I don't, because the whole thing about the sunroof was, you know, like, let's stand out of the sunroof like we're famous people waving. But I don't know if she was actually doing that because she was in the car yelling at Ben or having her freak out. Whatever the case, as she's getting out of her car, she kicks this dude in the face. And she's like, oh crap, I just kicked this dude in the face. Well, wouldn't you know, that dude turns out to be her cousin Sarah, who is getting married, her fiance Michael's stepbrother, Whit. Now we have this whole setup of, well, yeah, you made a fool of yourself and you're gonna have to see this guy all over the place. As I said, we do have a large cast of characters, namely because the crux of this novel centers around the game Assassin. It was Claire's favorite game. Claire and Meredith are sort of bookends. They were best friends, but they were nothing alike. But when it came to the game Assassin, Claire was a killer. Sarah, for everybody's wedding invitation, was like, hey, are you ready to play? So anybody who said yes is now signed up for this wedding-wide game of Assassin. And Meredith, who's not quite good at it, is like, I'm gonna win for Claire. So that's the whole premise of this novel. She comes for a wedding. She gets hooked into this game of Assassin. She meets a guy. Anywho, part of this is, as I said, she has a large cast of characters because they're there for the wedding. But not everybody's actually family. Some are like close friends that are like family. And these are the people that I had an issue with. So we have Luli, Eli, Jake, and Pravika. Luli's brother is Jake. Pravika does have a sister, but I don't think she's related to Eli. I think Luli, because Luli's adopted, so I think Jake and Eli are biological, and then Luli is their sister. Whatever the case, over the course of this novel, Luli has taken great offense to the fact that Meredith ignored all of them for the past 18 months, her in particular. And a little bit of a spoiler here, but not really. She eventually does confront Meredith about the fact that she thought Meredith was extremely selfish, and how could she not see that Meredith wasn't the only person hurting. Personally, I don't think Luli was necessary. I don't think she was developed well enough. I understand where the character is coming from and why we have that, but I didn't think we needed it. We had enough going on in other parts of the novel that we did not need Luli cold shouldering Meredith. Plus, this group, they decide to form an alliance, and within this alliance they're going to be helping each other and they're going to be throwing other people off the trail, but this alliance absolutely does nothing for each other. So I was like, why did we have this group of friends form an alliance that was ineffective? And then we have Eli, and so we are automatically introduced to the fact that Eli is gay. He has this massive crush on some guy. Everybody else knows about this guy, but obviously not Meredith, because Meredith hasn't been around. And his crush on this guy went nowhere. We eventually find out that this guy is in a relationship with somebody else. And I was like, so we went through this entire week of Eli talking about how this is his one true love, only for him to never talk to this guy. Just at the end of the novel, realize that this guy is with somebody else. Where was that storyline going? Why was it there? I don't know, but it took up space in my brain that my brain didn't have space for. Eli had no growth. Eli had no development for the most part. I'm okay with the main characters having friends, but what are their friends doing? How are the friends enabling the plot? These friends were not. I liked everybody but Luli in terms of being friends because they were very understanding of the fact that she went through something super traumatic, and you know what? Even if we're gonna try to be there for somebody, sometimes they're not gonna let us be there for them. And I think that's an honest reality. So I liked how supportive they were of her while also being very realistic with her about, yeah, it sucked that you didn't let us in, but they contributed to this cast of characters when I didn't feel like they actually needed to be there. And at some point I did find myself thinking, it's strange that Meredith is not in the wedding party because I'm sure Claire would have been the maid of honor or something. And maybe that's just my lack of understanding as to how close Sarah and Meredith were, rather versus the fact that Sarah was very close friends with Claire. But I thought maybe it could have served a better purpose if Meredith had been in the wedding party, and therefore that could have been the group, rather than having the female side of the wedding party and the male side of the wedding party, and then this little group of friends that Meredith is surrounded by. It was just a lot. Do I think she necessarily had to be part of the wedding party? No. Do I think some things served better because we didn't have to do all the wedding party stuff? Absolutely. But we didn't need that much, because then we had her parents, and then we had her grandparents, and then we had her aunts and her uncles, and then we had her cousins, and then we had the groom side of the family, and there was just a lot going on. Anyways, they get there, she learns who Wit is. She learns, hey, there is gonna be this massive game of assassin, and she is determined to win. I liked this for her. You could tell she was still grieving. You could tell all of her hesitancies in the things that she was withholding. It was nice to be like, this is probably who she was. It's nice for her to finally hold on to something. It's like 600 acres of land or something. Maybe not that much. Maybe it is. It doesn't matter. It's a lot of land. There are a lot of places to stay, but everything is booked for this wedding. Every single bedroom is full, except for in her room, there is a bunk bed. One for her, one for Claire. She's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep in this room. So she goes for a walk, and then this is where she encounters Wit. That's her first night. From then on, actually, she just starts sleeping in Wit's room. And they are, but they aren't something. But what they decide to do is to form a pact. Not necessarily an alliance like she has with her friends, but they're going to form a pact. To me, it was the same exact thing. And as I said, she did absolutely nothing with her friend alliance. Everything was with Wit. Over the course of the novel, they do grow closer, so their pact turns into more of an alliance because of their emotional attachments. Why did we have two alliances? The pact, it was really more, he knew his side, she knew her side, so hey, let's just feed each other information so that we know who our targets are. But then, almost from day one, they did more than just supply information. They supplied aid. She helped him get into places so that he could get his targets. He helped her get to where she needed to be to get to her targets. So it was a lost pinch point for me, if you want to call it a pinch point. Whatever the case, her very first target is her Aunt Rachel, and Aunt Rachel is heavily pregnant. She's like, that's great, totally fine that you knocked me out. She basically knocks out two targets in one day, but for some reason, she and Rachel are like, let's not, or at least she is like, let's not tell anybody. And then Rachel kind of goes along with it, and she's like, oh yeah, well, my aunt doesn't want anybody to know, that's why we didn't tell anybody. It didn't feel like she was being much of an assassin, and that was my biggest disappointment for her in this novel. Claire got into it. Claire was really ruthless and clever when it came to playing this game, and I was expecting Meredith to sort of pick up that mantle and be just as devious when it came to playing assassin, when really Wit was the one who was devious. I enjoyed Wit. I thought he was funny and charming. You know what? I'm sure he was really hot as well. Good character to have a crush on. Good character to have your main male lead. But I was kind of disappointed because I was like, where's the ruthlessness that I'm expecting to come from Meredith? And whatever goes on, she has no idea who her assassin is, so who's gotten her name. This whole book, you're sort of waiting for that moment, and I thought it was a bit anticlimactic when it did come, but at a certain point, so Rachel and her wife, Julie, they have two children. And one of them is Ethan. Ethan's like 6. And at some point, he's like, oh yeah, I heard my mom's talking. They know who's got your name. And she gets him to tell her that it's Ian who is Sarah's brother. I kept thinking that Ian was Eli, who was part of the Alliance, but then Eli had opted out of the game, so I was very confused throughout this entire novel. Again, it was listening to it versus reading it. I'm sure if I'd read it, I would have absorbed it differently, but so many people, so much happening. She is now looking out for Ian. Ian is Julie's godson. So now she's like, oh, I can't hang out with Rachel and Julie because they're going to be on Ian's side. So she's trying to avoid Ian while also trying to knock out her people and then also trying to help Whit knock out his people. Eventually, she inherits a girl named Viv, who is part of the wedding party. She knocks out Viv, and Viv, I don't understand why she has to be this way for the novel, but Viv is not the nicest person. She does not like the fact that she now has to hand her name over to Meredith. Her grandmother is Honey, her grandfather is Wink. They are impartial, as are Sarah and Michael. It gets to this point where she gets Wink involved because she's like, Viv will not hand over the name. Eventually, she checks her mailbox and there is a sassy note from Viv about how she got her grandfather involved, and then the name. And who do you think the name is? It is Whit. Meredith doesn't know exactly what to do because one of their promises they'd made to each other with this pact was if they'd gotten each other's names, they'd let each other know. She just doesn't want to let him know. For some reason or another, she says she's trying to figure out how they can both get to the end together. I don't exactly buy that. And one thing that Walther would do is she wouldn't give us the names of their victims right away, and she would just leave you hanging. Because they become so emotionally attached, this is why she ultimately can't take Whit down, and she's just kind of blaming it on other circumstances. Whit, on the other hand, has become the ultimate assassin, and there's like one day in which he takes down about 10 people in 2 hours. I would have loved to see more of that. Like, how is it that he is so lethal at this game, considering he doesn't know any of these people? He's never met anybody before in his life, yet he's comfortable enough sneaking around and doing all this stuff. It made for good fun and games, but those were those moments that I stepped out of the story and I was like, I need more of this versus just being told, hey, well, you were at the grocery store, he took out 10 people. What? How? Especially if she's helping him because she knows the people he doesn't and he knows the people she doesn't. They start to get closer. They don't really define anything, but she will spend the night in his room. She learns that his parents are divorced, which is how he is stepbrothers with Michael. And he had gone to Tulane because Tulane is in New Orleans and that is where his dad lives. And he wants to get closer to his dad. He didn't even know his dad was married or getting married until at some point. So the dad had kept saying, hey, you should come because he's living in Vermont. And his dad's like, yeah, you should come see us, blah, blah, blah. And then when he does show up, it's to watch his father get married. So he has all of these issues surrounding this. He no longer has issues with his step family, but he has come to a point in his life where he's like, I went to Tulane so my father could notice me. He has noticed me. They still don't have the best of relationships. And he's like, it's now time for me to do something else. So I'm going to go to New Zealand for a year. And this throws Meredith off because even though it was sort of a fling kind of thing, especially because of Luli, there's this heavy emphasis on going all in with him. This is kind of this realization for her where she's like, well, maybe I'm more invested than I thought because I don't like the idea that he's going to be gone for a year, even though he keeps insisting it's only for a school year. For Meredith's part, she is planning on going to something a little bit more local. It's also where her dad at least teaches, and she does have to start to wonder, hey, am I going to this school because it's safe? Or am I going to this school because I want to go to this school? So she is having those moments. We do have very early on throughout the novel, we have Ben reaching back out to her and showing remorse, recognizing I did not make the best decision. But the one thing about her relationship that she never noticed prior to Claire's death, but Claire had always noticed, was that it was an uneven relationship. He was taking more than he was giving, and he wasn't the best boyfriend for her. However, at this point, she's like, you know what? I'm better than you. So she does eventually shut it down. But I thought there were going to be some higher stakes considering everything that we are given in the beginning of the novel. I thought we should have had a little bit more push and pull, some more tension regarding kind of almost a love triangle, as much as I hate love triangles. I needed more between them, because we get some like drunken texts and some apology texts and like one or two voicemails. And then what she does is she finally listens to his voicemail and she's like, absolutely not. I'm not the girl on your arm. You're the guy on my arm. She gives him a call. She gives him the what for. She hangs up. She blocks him. And that is it. And I was like, couldn't we have had some back and forth with him? Some conversation between the two to really hash some things out. I love that she stood up for herself. I love that she said, enough is enough. This is not what I want. This is not what I deserve. But we built up what was going on between them to a certain point, and that's not the, I didn't feel like the resolution matched the buildup. After she gets Whit's name, there is this kind of family gathering, potluck kind of deal, and Whit, his next target is Jake. So he takes Jake out, and when Jake comes in all wet, Luli recognizes, or all of that little friend group has sort of recognized how Meredith and Whit are hanging out and spending time together, and is something going on between them. But Luli, most of all, I think because she's so hurt by Meredith's behavior, she is the one who's kind of taking it to another level. She has all these other kinds of suspicions. And so she, when Meredith's like, hey, let me go get some towels, she's like, let me come with you. Meredith knows this is not going to be a happy chat. Luli accuses her. She's like, you formed another alliance with somebody else and you didn't even tell us. You've betrayed us, and you know what? You're extremely selfish because you're not the only one affected by Claire's death. I have feelings about that. I've already talked about it, but Meredith, it really hurts her. I mean, she does have her come to Jesus moment where she realizes, because she's tried over the course of the novel, tried to rectify things with Luli, tried to apologize for certain behaviors, but as she has a week of growth, she's going to continue to do things that Luli will take offense to. And so she's continuing to seek Luli out, continuing to apologize to her, but whatever. We have this moment where Luli really comes after her. She breaks down, Sarah comes up, and they have this chat because, as I said, Sarah had been there when Claire died, and Claire's death is this. New Year's Eve, Sarah and Michael are in New Orleans. They invite Claire down to come with them because I think Claire was going to go to Tulane as well. They're out, they're eating, they're drinking. Sarah cannot drive, so she's like, hey, Claire, you're super responsible, you drive. They get in the car only for a drunk driver to hit them, and Claire dies immediately. Sarah escapes with certain injuries. A story that Sarah tells earlier in the novel is that Claire and Meredith hate salads. She tells this story about this one time that Claire came to New Orleans and they were eating at a restaurant, and Claire didn't know what to order, so somebody else ordered things for her, one of which was a salad, and it was just so funny how Claire was able to push this salad around on her plate and make it look like she was eating it while she never was actually eating it. This is upsetting to Meredith because Meredith recognizes that this story occurred on the night that Claire died, and she's like, how in the world could Sarah be telling this story? As Meredith has had her breakdown and Sarah comes to check in on her and to comfort her, they hash it out in a way, and she's like, how in the world could you tell this story? How could you tell it like that? how could you not be affected? And Sarah is like, I started and I didn't know how to stop because I didn't want other people to recognize the significance of the time period in which this story took place. But they finally have their healing moment. All is right with the world again. Meredith comes across her aunt. She comes across Rachel as Rachel is doing her yoga in the morning, or her meditation. And this is something that she's continuously asked or invited Meredith to be a part of. It is something that she used to share with Claire. And Meredith was like, no, I don't really want to do it. And I must have missed the importance of this and the frequency of this throughout the novel. But it seems that having this meditation time with her aunt was very helpful for her healing. However, once she learned that Ian had her name, she was like, I am going to be a sitting duck if I'm doing meditation in the morning. I will not do that. But she runs across Rachel, and Rachel's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, Ian never had your name because Julie had just taken Ian out, and Ian did not have her name. So then this whole entire novel, while we're sort of looking over our shoulders, we're looking for the wrong person. And so Meredith kicks herself because she's like, this was a classic move. This is something that me and my group had done earlier in the novel, where we had switched names and we had given people false names. Like, I had given somebody else's victim so they wouldn't know who my true victim is. This is the point where I did keep wondering, where is the suspense? Where are the near misses of somebody coming after Meredith, of those red herrings? I wanted more of that. And what we learn is that even though Ian had never had Meredith's name, he does have a partner in crime, and we don't know who that partner in crime is. But the understanding is the partner in crime is kind of doing what some other people have done in the past, and sort of what Meredith claims that she's doing with Whit's name, in which, let me not take my person out just yet. Let that person take as many other people out as possible. Then I will take them out, so that way there's not as many people left on the playing field. I guess this is how they're explaining why nobody has even tried to come after Meredith, lulling her into a false sense of security, because if she's looking at Ian, she'll be far more comfortable with the other people in her circle. I liked it, but I thought the whole game of assassin was cloak and dagger. And the whole point was for her to take up her sister's mantle. And it felt really like it was more about her relationship with Whit, which is fine. And also her coming to terms with her sister's death, which again is fine. But if we're couching it in this game of assassin, why can't we have a higher emphasis on the game of assassin, and in the way that Meredith is trying to play the game in a way that she's never played before? It really feels like she's not doing anything at all, because she's hit 2 people, maybe 3. Seriously, out of the dozen or so people, maybe like 24 people involved in this game, and you've only hit 3, and 2 of those were on your first day? Anticlimactic much? Don't let that get in the way. I did like this book. There are just some parts where I thought they could have been improved. Now we're like, well, what's the deal? She has Whit. She's lying to Whit about the fact that she has him, because he's point blank asked her, do you have me? And she's like, oh no, I have Luli. Which you know is going to turn into something later. And now she's like, well, who does actually have me? But does that really make her watch her back even more, considering she has no idea who has her name? She goes on Instagram. So there's this whole Instagram thing going on with the wedding and the hashtag for the wedding. They have asked the bridal party to be more active on social media in order to promote, what's going on with this wedding, why it matters. I don't know, but I guess that's the way social media works, or at least it used to. She and Whit don't have each other's numbers, but they do message back and forth on Instagram. There's this one thing that happens, and at some point she realizes that she hasn't seen a lot of videos of Sarah, and she's like, well, when was the last video of Sarah. So she's on there and she finds a video from the night that Claire died. She learns that Whit had been sitting next to Claire all night and they'd had this entire night of getting to know each other. And she feels betrayed that Whit never told her that he had met Claire. She approaches him about it and he's like, well, I thought you knew because all these times, and when he says all these times, it might have been twice. Like in the novel, we actually saw him attempt something. And he's like, the way that you would deflect made me think that you already knew and you didn't want to talk about it. Then, as they are discussing that, she gets taken out. And I was just like, she what? She got taken out? She's taken out by her Uncle Brad, who is her dad's brother. Again, a lot of people, a lot of in-laws. The author states that her name had apparently been passed around quite a bit, but I feel like only 3 people had her name, so I don't know what that means. Like, her name had been passed around quite a bit, but he had inherited her name. He had come up with this ruse, and the most lackluster assassination of all time occurs where he just squirts her in the back. And I was like, where was the suspense? Where was the buildup? And then all of a sudden, she just has this realization that she's out, and that's it. The unfortunate part of that is she has to hand over her name, which means she has to hand Whit's name over to Brad, and Whit is standing right there. This whole time, we know that she has Whit. That's right, her third person, she had to take out Whit's dad. His handle on Instagram is "It's So Witty," and she's just like, kind of clever, I like your handle. His dad's name is Oscar, and his last name is Witchery, so his name is not actually Whit. So we also know very early on that his name is not Whit Witchery, his name is Whit because his last name is Witchery. Even though we know that she has him, we don't actually know what his real name is. And turns out his name is Stephen. And this is a big deal because at some point when they were younger, Claire had declared that, and this is something that I enjoyed because it's something I'd forgotten had even come up in the book. Claire had declared that Meredith was going to marry a Stephen. Then this ties back to the night of Claire's death because Whit reveals that Claire, this entire night, was talking Meredith up. Even though Meredith had been in this relationship with Ben for 4 years, Claire was like, you've got to meet my sister. My sister's so awesome. You guys would be great for each other, blah, 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 blah. This whole time when she didn't have his number, he did have hers because Claire had given it to him. When Claire had said something to Meredith about meeting somebody, Meredith was thinking it was for her. But all along, Claire had found somebody for Meredith. So I liked how that came full circle. I liked how those were little breadcrumbs that we didn't see coming together until they came together. That's the kind of writing that I like, where it's all in front of my face, but I don't know how to put the puzzle pieces together. And then when they are together, I'm just like, whoa, that's so cool. And now Whit's in the wind because he doesn't want to get assassinated, but now he is upset with her because she lied to him about the fact that she had his name. I understand why he would be hurt, but why it's a big deal, I personally did not understand because their relationship evolved. It became more emotionally invested. Can you blame her? While they're both sort of mad at each other, they're still like hanging out and kissy-feely and doing things that make me feel like they're not actually mad at each other, but then they still haven't resolved their issues. And so we have a little bit of back and forth. He eventually proposes the idea that, hey, like, why don't you come to New Zealand with me? Like, why are you going to Hamilton? What is your goal in life? So this, again, gets her to think, why am I doing what I'm doing? Could I actually do that? But she says, no, that's not going to work. We're not going to work. Did you actually see us going past this? And how could this work? Before the wedding, Rachel does end up going into labor, which is really neither here nor there, except for the fact that Julie is actually still part of the game. Rachel goes into labor during the rehearsal dinner, And then the next day, before the wedding, which I thought this was kind of strange timing. I mean, in terms of pacing, I get it, but like, honestly, this is my wedding and we're gonna finish a game of Assassin the morning of my wedding. Whatever. They're a different breed of people, honestly. Like, having a whole week for a wedding is shocking to me, and everybody just takes off of work and comes together at the family farm that was established in like the 1700s, is on Martha's Vineyard or whatever. I mean, say, you know, you're wealthy without saying you're wealthy. The morning of the wedding, they're like, all right, we're gonna have the finale, and it's very Hunger Games-esque. There's 7 people. We have Whit, Brad, Luli. How did Luli stay in this game? Pravika's older sister. We have a groomsman. We have Julie. We have like one other person. Very inconsequential. It all comes down to Brad and Whit. It looks like Brad is about to take Whit down, only for Meredith to toss him a hidden water gun, which he uses to take Brad down. And of course, Brad's like, oh no, that's illegal, and there's really no rule. You can't do it within 10 feet of a doorway. It can't interfere with any of the wedding events. And then, there are no rules, essentially. The one thing about this was kind of confusing. So she was in a lounger, and her lounger was over the perimeter line to a point where she could hide the water gun. So the water gun was within the perimeters. I don't know. There's something about her lounger being over the line, but everybody's stuff was over the line, and it doesn't really matter. The point of the story is that she is able to sneakily get him his weapon. He is able to take out Brad. He is the winner. The wedding goes off without a hitch. They're having like a dance and they're talking things through and they're just trying to figure out what's going to go on. And she essentially rejects him. She does finally spend the night in her own bed. She actually sleeps in Claire's bed. The next day, everybody's saying goodbye. She and her parents are preparing to leave. I don't know, Luli, her little group of friends, she's chatting with them and like, are you crazy? You're letting Whit get away? She's like, oh no, I can't let Whit get away. So she goes and she finds him and she's like, hey, let's make it work. We learn he does go to New Zealand. She goes to Hamilton, but now they are back at the farm that summer and things are hunky-dory. She's working at the bookstore that her sister always worked at, and things are hunky-dory. I did forget, so I was mentioning his dad. This was like the one point where you could have guessed what his name actually is, because when she gets Whit's name, she's like, but I already took him out. And because we know she already took the dad out, then you know that somehow his name is linked to his dad's. His handle is It's So Witty. It's actually It's S-O, so Stephen Oscar Witry. And the dad's name is Oscar. So anyway, there were some really clever things in this book. It was just, it was a lot for the simplicity. And I do wish she would have pared it down. It would have made it easier for me to keep characters straight and events straight, especially because it's all packed into a week. But I liked this book. I found the narration was enjoyable and it was quick to get through. So totally recommend it. If you guys have anything else that's similar to this, I would love to know. Why it's the Summer of Broken Rules, when I sit down and think about it, I don't know, because I don't really know what rules she broke. Because in the game there were no rules. But anywho, love to hear your thoughts and your suggestions, and I'll see you around. Bye!